snare drumming on point once again. Grand Rising, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Huddle. My name is Chase Steele Gray. It's a pleasure to be with you as always. One of my favorite parts of the week, without a doubt. And yes, today's a special day for the Huddle because I have a gentleman that I'm going to be speaking with who I have the utmost respect for. He's full of information. He has lots of things going on in his brain that he's going to let seep into the Huddle today, which I'm so excited for. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. And I love this very concise little bio. It may be my favorite yet because it's the smallest yet so powerful.
Well, you
Marcus
said,
Antebi.
when you sent me the invite, it said, make it freaking concise. Yeah, I was just following instructions.
Right. So here it is. Marcus Antebi, retired skydiver, Muay Thai fighter, founder of the company Juice Press and Goodsugar in New York. I'm 55 years old and 40 years clean and sober. What a great bio. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to have you here. I love our friendship. I love our interactions. And our
Amazing.
topic today, how do we find happiness? What an interesting sentence. Definitely can be unpacked by different people in different ways. Before we get into it, just give us, man, you know what? Before we say how do we find happiness, give us briefly your personal definition of happiness, if you would.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm taking your lead like you told me, and we're talking rhythmic and slow. We're not going bop, 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 which we could do that too. If I get like that, please just slow me down. Say hamburger or something like that, and
Yes, sir.
I'll
Yes, sir.
I'll take some deep breaths. The word happiness is interchangeable to me with the word health.
Mm.
And a great doctor that I'm friends with, Jeffrey Mechanic, we were talking about this visual design I made for one of the restaurant stores that was talking about happiness. And he said to me, he said, you should change that word to health. And I said, well, what is health? And he said, true health is being symptom-free and happy.
Mm.
And I just want to say I passed that through a mentor friend of mine who's 80 years old, and he's like, I'm not so sure about that. I said, well, take some time to think about it. And then a month later we were talking again. He said, I agree. And so I think, philosophy sometimes becomes like really heavy suitcases at the end of a trip. You're so heavy, and it's like the worst idea that you packed all that stuff. So I would say that in short, if you have a concept in your mind that the goal is to be symptom free and seek, happiness as a way of measuring your health, I just think that it's just a light pack. You don't have to carry too much.
Symptom-free and happy. In all of my years on the earth, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it so concisely and so directly. I really enjoyed that, what you just said. Like I wrote it down. I love it. I think it's
Well,
great.
we should unpack it, right? We should unpack it a little bit because there's just
Yes.
like any good philosophy, there's always caveats and paradoxes and things like that.
Correct.
What,
Correct.
what we should say is that the stuff that I'm talking about with you is within the realm of what I would call self-help, right? Survival is self-help. And
Right.
so there are cases that we see constantly where there are people who are helpless or can't help themselves. It could be because of they're too young, too old. There could be mental illness. There could be a lot of factors. And so what we would say is that what we're talking about fits in the range of people who can actually do the work and do something. So
Right.
it's not exclusive of people who are helpless. It's just the rules change a little bit when a person requires intervention. So I just want to
Correct.
be clear that that's all I'm really talking about is happiness that can be achieved by the individual taking the steps and doing the work.
Right. So to be very literal and very direct, if I said, hey, how do I find the subway? You can show me. Hey, how do I find the best place to get some good juice? You can find me. How do I find the Empire State Building? I'll tell you right where that is. But when you ask someone to find happiness, we're talking about something that is already in us. we are just moving the gunk out of the way in many ways to accentuate it and let it flow. Correct or not? How do you see that?
I think it's possible. So I wouldn't say correct or not. I would just say for the purpose of keeping light luggage and packing, there's probably a cleaner way to say it.
Right.
Since we're using words, obviously, that's really, it's always about the semantics and tightening up and editing it so that we can comprehend it. And certainly if we're teaching it, it has to even really fit in even better, because who the hell knows what's going on in people's mind. So I think happiness is a state of mind. It's not, you might say that from happiness, you can say it's a feeling if you want. I don't think it's a feeling. I'm not an expert in that level of nuance in words, but I would say it's more of a state of mind. And from happiness, you can say that a range of positive feelings exist. And if someone said, well, how do I become happy? I would laugh and say, get online, right? You know, it's 27.5 years worth of work. And if you're asking that, then that's probably how far away you are from that. So instead of asking how to become happy, we can say, what work do I need to do prior to set myself up to be happy? Because there's no guarantee. And so the first thing I would teach people is to understand the difference between the modalities that the central nervous system work in, which is parasympathetic brain and sympathetic brain, or fight and flight or relaxation. I mixed it up. Parasympathetic is relaxed. Sympathetic is anxiety. My philosophy has become over the decades that that's all that matters, and that's all we should be thinking about, because philosophy is constantly changing and there's paradoxes in it, and oftentimes there isn't a lot of methodology. So let me just pause with that so that you can keep up with this craziness. Ask me something in there, but am I sort of becoming a little bit clear on how?
Oh, totally. I can't help but, when I'm listening to you, think about times, the optimal times of happiness that I've had in my life, and what that vibration felt like in those moments. Was I able to harness it and sit within it, or was it fleeting? Right? As I'm thinking about what you're saying. And I remember hundreds of times of being happy. And I talk to people sometimes, and I've heard people say, you know, I just want to be happy. And they say it in a way as if everything external is keeping them from being happy internally. And that may be their story.
But it's the same thing.
Right.
It's the same thing. You know, the point of differentiating the external world and whatever's happening from the internal world, it's valid in explanations, but let's just be clear. All is mind. We create the world, and of course we're going to be affected by the visuals that are coming at us, the smells, the senses. So that gets too complicated and theoretical and, you know, philosophical.
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning you asked me what is happiness. You know, I was just warming up and trying to just relax myself. And so what my intention is to say that happiness is foolish, because it's just a word and it's elusive. The easier word to say is, how do I get myself back into parasympathetic brain? How do I get myself to be relaxed? If you're relaxed, it isn't possible to be unhappy. It would be a paradox.
There you go.
To become happy requires something incredible. To become relaxed just requires breathing. It's much easier. It's it. You drop the mic with that. I don't teach happiness. I teach breathing, because I know what it leads to. When you're in a parasympathetic central nervous system, now you can be in the present moment. And if you don't know what being in the present moment is, we can talk about that.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I believe, just me personally, that when we master or come close to, because we'll spend our whole life going toward this goal, present, happiness exposes itself much clearer. That's what I feel for me. When I'm present, right now I'm talking to you. I see you, I feel you, I have my own thoughts about you. I'm thinking about, wow, what a beautiful minimalistic background he has in his home. I'm here, I'm watching you, right? As soon as I go, oh shoot, I got to make that call at 11.
You got it.
That then I'm not there anymore.
You got it. You got it. Now, what you're teaching is the hardest thing in the world to teach.
Right.
And it's the only thing to teach, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there's a
Right.
lot of ways to teach it, right? You can just have a juggler stand at a kid's party and throw 16 balls in the air. You're teaching children how to look at the balls and focus. So it depends on who you're talking to, how complicated we make the discussion. You know, you and I can sit and talk about how black holes absorb gravity and light and spin around and do kind of stuff like that. It's really romantic. But if it isn't causing us to relax, then we're just wasting time. We're burning hours on the clock. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The concentration and my focus is first of all, let's go take a step back and talk a little bit about the journey, if you wish. I'm following your lead. Okay.
Absolutely.
The journey for me at age 15 was reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous 3 times cover to cover when I was in drug rehab for over 86 days and practically memorizing it, you know, from cover to cover.
Right.
Was I relaxed after that? No. Did I stay sober? Yes. I had a fighting chance.
Okay.
All my behavior in my sobriety, the following 20 years, would indicate a person with intense anxiety, which is normal because we all have anxiety. It's a characteristic of our survival. It's because of the traumatic experiences and the variety of experiences that we collect as we grow up. It determines whether or not we remain in fight or flight our entire life as a pattern. And it's so normalized that we don't see the difference. And so what we might have is some moments of relaxation, like when we're eating a good meal. But even then, I watch myself or people, when they're eating a good meal, they're in anxiety. I watch how fast they eat or how they don't actually stay with the meal. They're thinking about something else. They're moving ahead or they're worried. They're in the thought bubbles of the head. So the idea is that we need a lot of years of practice just to observe the mind of how it keeps moving away from reality, which is right now. We also have to realize there are times when that's valuable, like when you're driving at 160 miles an hour on the Autobahn, and you're looking 4 miles ahead to see if there's any obstacles, probably a good idea. But when you're doing that, you're still really present. You're just looking ahead. Right? So the idea is to watch yourself throughout the day, how your sensations fluctuate. Where is there a relaxed state and where does it go heart rate up? Where do the narratives, as soon as the narratives come in, as soon as the thought bubbles pop up, it's an indication that you stepped out of parasympathetic brain and you went into sympathetic mode on a mild way. You're studying the world again, you're judging, you're calculating, you're trying to predict the uncertain world. There has to be anxiety and it's okay to some degree when it's valuable or useful for your survival. Other times, it's an absolute distraction from being alive. We miss the whole program, and also we make all of our decisions from that place, and it's a snowball effect of catalyzing more and more negative thoughts to the point where we're in pain. And we have no choice then to find maladaptive behavior patterns such as addictions, which we have a myriad of.
I know that you have children. For me personally, I get some of my best lessons about happiness and presence from children. How has your experience having children either taught you about happiness or presence?
That's a good question. I appreciate that. First thing is you're 100% right. When you watch children, there's something really innocent about how they can move from a temper tantrum to playing with their unicorn and laughing.
Yes.
And it's not because they're mentally ill, it's because of how their brains are developed and structured, how they hold on to stuff, what their awareness levels are. There's a whole bunch of things in there that I'm not the expert to explain. But when you do watch it, you say, I'd like to have that quality. I'd like to go from being really upset because I didn't get my job and then, hey, I'm on the grass, I'm going to do some somersaults. Except it looks a little ridiculous when a grown-up's doing it, but I am kind of like that. You watch me, I have skateboards and I'm childlike. I'm serious, like a sergeant at war, but I'm also ridiculous at the same time. And I listen to philosophy and then comedians cursing at their audience, you know. So I I move around in that. So the first thing is just watching it. Yes, it is really metaphoric to watch that. The other thing is it forces me to be present because my 4-year-old starts to act out when she sees me drifting from paying total attention to her. She'll say
Right.
something like, Daddy, can we play? And if, like, I'm just saying, honestly, at that moment, if I say, I'm busy, I get such a big flunk in the universe. And, like the Family Feud, remember that, where you get the big X?
Yeah.
The idea is when she says, Daddy, do you want to play? And I say, yes, I am completely altering my childhood
Right.
in that moment. I am completely altering. I am doing something totally different than what happened to me. And evolution loves that. They're looking at it and they're going, look at that. We'll keep this old guy around for a little bit longer. So
Yes.
what she does is she forces me to stay in the present moment. And then when we play, I just watch how after 2 minutes of playing with ponies, I'm back off to the races again. I'm thinking about the podcast I'm doing at 9 in the morning. I'm thinking about a bill that I have to pay. And it forces me to come back because I'm so accountable to her developing healthy. Nothing else has that power. There's no yoga class or guru or contest. There's no, positive affirmation, self-help guru that can actually get my mind to do that in an instant. When I'm with her and I'm holding her hand, I say to myself, if I lose my focus, this child could become a drug addict. I
Mm.
know that my responsibility is that intense. And so I'm back in the moment.
Right.
Not all
Right.
the time, by the way. It's imperfect, so welcome to the game of life.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at presence and I look at happiness, I would say I'm a very if I had to look at myself, I would say I'm a very happy person most of the time, like in the high 80s to 90s. In that 10%, it's always when I'm not present, and it's always where I'm going too far back to relive an experience or to take some sort of uh, what is the word I'm looking for? To process something in a very inorganic way, which I know is not the right way to do it. That's where the problem starts. That's where happiness goes, okay, bye bye. And it starts to pull away from you, right? I study happy people through books and I watch them. I watch certain people who they're always happy and they're like, yeah, let's do this. Yeah, let's do that. But I also say to myself, listen, many times, and I for some reason, I think of Robin Williams right away. When I did a little background on him and figured out all the stuff was going on before he passed, it was like, wow, there's this gray area that says, well, what about that guy? He made so many people laugh. He was so happy, but yet he was fighting something inside
That's
that he
where
couldn't.
that's where comparisons always get dangerous, right?
Right.
Because you don't really know. You can look at a couple walking down the street holding hands and go, "Wow, they're so in love," and then they get home and they're filing divorce papers
Totally. Totally.
because their therapist's recommendation that they walk down the street holding hands was just a
Yes.
trial for something that wasn't working. So
Right.
you're never going to stop making comparisons. It's one of the ways that we learn things, right? But
Right.
in this regard, at the level that you're at right now, you're floating out in space on your own. There's nothing to compare yourself to.
Correct.
It's just your experience now and what you feel like. You seem to think that you're 80%, 90% happy with some fluctuations. I could challenge that and say, well, wait a second. Who the hell said that life on this earth was supposed to be that easy in the first place? It's pretty challenging for every creature on the planet, and there's a lot of turbulence going on and the fluctuations of weather and tornadoes and floods and famine. I don't know that this experience is supposed to be 80% happy, 20%, sorry, 20% suffering.
Right.
So that's even important for me because if I start thinking that we're supposed to be happy and people everywhere are happy, I'm already creating anxiety.
Right.
Like Zelensky over in Ukraine, who's seemingly winning a war, I don't know that he walks around saying he's happy, but is he present? Is he experiencing life? Is he fulfilling a purpose? That
Mm.
also could be the definition of happiness. So
Correct.
that's why we bring back the concept of presence of mind to really reflect our consciousness where we're at rather than the state of mind. Because if someone you love just died, that's definitely going to be a moment of unhappiness, but you can still be present in that You can still feel the sensations of that, and you can then practice all of the things that you practice when you're in a relaxed state. Like, oh my God, this is a wave of terrible emotions now that are coming over me. But I've been practicing for 3 decades. I'm going to take deep breaths. I'm going to write. I'm going to talk to my friends. I'm going to cry. I'm going to listen to Barry Manilow. I'm going to eat a gallon of ice
Correct.
cream. You can now use the things that you're practicing. And I would take the concept of happiness, I almost take it out of the equation.
Right. And I can't believe you just said what you just said because I had
Right? You like Barry Manilow?
I was going to make a comment about the Barry Manilow, but I'll get back to that. Last evening, I was in the hospital and my uncle passed away. I was the only person with him. I had spoken to you earlier in the evening. I was the only person with him. And I put on some Miles Davis and I looked into his eyes in his final 3 hours. I didn't know it was his final 3 hours, but I put the music on. I rubbed his head. I talked to him. I looked in his eyes and I had a very, very powerful experience. I'd never watched someone passing away in front of me. And it's interesting what you just said because I used all my tools in that moment. I put the beautiful jazz on. I stayed calm. I cried a little bit. I moved away. I looked up at the sky. I came back again, but I was present with him. And I was the only person in the room. 20 something people had been there back and forth. And I was the person in that last bracket of time of his life. I say that because it gave me the opportunity to practice the presence that I always talk about, but it also is still with me. There's something looming in my chest right now because
Well,
it
you're in the
reminds
grieving you're in the grieving process. I
right
mean,
and the
and
fragility of life in
and
general.
also you might be disconnected from that. Your process of grieving may be you have to talk positive bullshit for a month
Right,
until you can sit down somewhere and go, okay, life sucks, and then have to go through the cathartic process of bringing yourself back
right,
to gratitude and beauty. That's another thing that people get caught in the mind trap of not actually knowing the appropriate response to a negative feeling because most of us are stoic. We grew up actually just, keeping the game face on. So
right,
and so the idea here is that when anyone, a stranger, if you brought someone in from a car accident and you brought them to the hospital and you were the only person there to get them into treatment and you were standing outside the room and they deceased, you'd have to go through a traumatic uh, a trauma healing process. If you're sensitive and empathetic and you're not shut down and smoking crack in your bathroom, you're going to feel something and it's going to feel like grief and loss and you're going to lose your self-esteem and you're going to have to rewind all the tapes of life and bring yourself back into a state of grace. You can't just skip that step.
right.
I mean, even the Dalai Lama, when his best friend, a monk who he meditated with for 60 years, passes away, I assure you that there's some grief, there's some crying, there's be some wiping of the tears, emotions swell up. I'm sure there'll be paradoxes and complexity, and he'll have to go back to some teachings to find his balance and stuff like that. And then
Oh,
at a certain appropriate point for his level of focus and concentration, he returns back to the deep breath and there's acceptance. That's the true healing process, which I seldomly meet anyone who ever actually knows how to grieve their losses to completion, which is hence another trigger for our, chronic anxiety that we have in society. We don't
right.
grieve our daily losses, the small ones. Missing the train is a loss for me. It made me anxious. So when I get on the train that I'm going to, there might be some residual that I have to let go of. If I don't, it's just building up. It's building up. And then that happened. And then that happened. And then my microphone didn't work for the podcast. And by the end of the day, I'm a basket case.
Right.
And that's not a state of mind that I want to be in at this stage. So I have to watch those things while they're happening. And I have to provide myself on a daily basis. Each day is a hard reset. It's just amazing. I don't wake up wanting to smoke crack. I'm not talking like that. I'm just because I'm really past all that. What I'm saying is a hard reset for me is every day I wake up and there is an infinite number of possibilities who I might be. I might have a dream that started me off sleeping wrong and I have a crick in my back and then I get up to go to the bathroom and my left foot hits the edge of the corner of the bed and then when I flush the toilet you know, it just starts building up. And I didn't even leave the house yet. I'm already completely disconnected, and I'm in the insanity of the mind, the obsession of the mind. I'm not in a relaxed state, and so it's a daily wake up. I start to breathe. I don't open my eyes. I take 10 slow, deep breaths, and I already know there's a problem if I'm not even willing to do that. Like if I'm like, just get up, come on, blah, blah, blah. If that mind shows up, I'm like, you're staying here for 20 breaths. And I take those deep breaths and I go through my gratitude list. And then, you know, somewhere in there, no matter what I do, I'm going to go, okay, here's your problem today. Okay. And then I have to read something that just reminds me of the continuation that I'm on. It's just a loop that I'm creating mostly from my subconscious mind. And the only opportunity I ever have to truly have free will in this lifetime is when I breathe and I bring myself to the present moment, because then everything that I do is only informed by the now with a little bit of taint of the history of yesterday. And that's the daily work for me, is to not get completely bogged down by the weight of everything that's happened to me, even the good stuff, because I want new good stuff. So I almost have to just let go of my past success and say, okay, start over. I'm starting over today. Today's a whole new person. I'm born with memory, but the memory doesn't have to control me.
Right.
And that's a lifetime of work, my friend. I'm not selling anybody an instant, 5 steps to happiness program here.
No.
I'm not selling anything, but I'm just saying, like, if I was selling a program, I would sell it. And I actually have something that I wrote. It's the 22,000 easy steps to becoming happy.
22,000.
That's right. So the first step to happiness is to recognize there's no 5 steps, there's no 10 steps, there's no 50 steps. It's 22,000 steps. It's a million different things, and most of them are shit you have to invent, because one of your steps of happiness is making sure your sombrero fits nicely. It's not on my fucking list, excuse my language if I can curse. It's not on my list to make sure my hat fits and my dreads are flowing. That's on your list. Right? And I have other shit, like I got to make sure that my tattoos aren't fading on my neck. Nonsense. I'm being silly. But a lot of the stuff that makes you content is your unique stuff. I want to hear about it.
Right.
The common ground that we have is that we all need to relax. And we do that in a very scientific way. Nature and evolution created this incredible system called the central nervous system. And it's so obvious what it is that nobody even looks at it except ancient people. Ancient people knew all this, and you can see it. It's written in Western philosophy from ancient times, Europeans, Africa, Asians, Far East India, indigenous cultures, the Aboriginals of Australia. Every ancient culture had a system to take the hyperactive, crazy mind of the human that is free will and filled with nonsense, and our ability to jump into different time sets like the past and the present, and they had a way to refocus it and bring it back to parasympathetic state. That's it. That's my entire message for you. What do you want to talk about, Juice? Sorry, I got a little hype at the end.
I brought you on here because I love how you think. You always make me think deeper. I think our concepts work together in a lot of ways. It's just an interesting pot to do, if you will. So here's the thing. It's 9:30. If anyone has a question for you, I would love that. I would love to invite you back again in the next 4 weeks to 6 weeks, because there's a lot of stuff we didn't touch on. But the information that you gave, in my personal opinion, was, oh my goodness. Okay, Lizeth, Sally Thompson, can we please take that person out? Wow.
What, somebody was cursing at me?
No, there's somebody. Okay. Wow, that was that was an instant distraction. Wow, see, just then my presence.
Well, you know what we said, that's probably necessary because you're doing a live show, and whatever distracted you was probably right. The thing that I would do different is take that deep breath to stay calm and stay relaxed while you're doing that task. And nothing illustrates that better than the experiences I had in my life when I was skydiving and I had my first parachute malfunction. And I looked up in the sky and I saw my parachute wasn't functioning. I took a deep breath and I pulled my release handle and I deployed my reserve, and my heart rate didn't change by 1 beat.
Mm.
Okay. And so no matter what you're experiencing, no matter what it is, it's always important to go. More oxygen means higher thinking.
More oxygen means higher thinking. I
More
believe
oxygen
that.
or more oxygen means lower heart rate, which means back into parasympathetic central nervous system.
Correct. Correct. So I do not see any questions, but I would love to have you back again. Oh, I do. I'm sorry.
Does that mean
Florence.
I'm not popular if someone's not asking me a
No,
question?
you
They
are
just
definitely
want me
popular.
off the show.
Florence, please go right
Well,
ahead. We have a couple of minutes.
I'm in sync with what is being discussed. I never had a chance to be a child because I had to take on the responsibility of being a parent to my siblings and even to my parents when I was just 7 years old. And I'm 67 now, and I believe the universe is giving me a chance to be a child again. It seems as though I have taken up from 7 now, and I am being a child. I am just leaning into ease, joy, and grace. Those 3 things, I am like I'm determined to experience that.
Imagine if I met a 27-year-old version of you and you said, "How do I become happy?" And I say to you, "Just wait 40 years." You would have thrown yourself out of a window. You know,
Yeah.
what you're saying
Yeah.
about that is a few things. One is age and practice. Second thing is, as the body begins to contract, the mind begins to expand automatically. It's an
Yeah.
equal and opposite reaction, which is one of the many mysterious laws of the universe, right? And as whatever is occurring as mechanical functions in physics of the universe, the mind is created the exact same way. It moves in the same similar patterns, and let's not go into that. But I'm happy to hear what you're saying. I would say if you want to put a tiny bit of science into what you're saying, so it's not just abstract, is that just pay attention to the normal ebbs and flows of those tiny little experiences of normal anxiety. For example, if you turn a sink on and it's hot water and you burn your hand, be an observer of that sensation and the subsequent sensations that follow and say, oh, this is what anxiety is for. And then
Yes.
breathe to watch yourself put it in the past and move on and say, okay,
Yes.
now I know when I turn that sink on, I better test it first, right? You could see
Yes.
that that's presence of mind. And also at the age of life that you're in, it's all about how to condense a positive message and give it to the future generation, because that
Yes.
means evolution still has a purpose to keep you around.
Yes.
They're like, wait a
Yes.
second, this lady can teach the next generation some shit that's valuable. They're going to keep you here. That's my opinion.
Yes. So that's where I am, ready to teach. Really, really ready to teach. The motivation, like I wanted to be a motivational speaker all my life, and just to pass on the love of God to the human race. And that's where I am right now. And the experience that I have had finding that heart of God, that love. And because I found it, not to say that I'm perfect or anything, but oh my God, I, like the Bible said, unless you become like little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And my, I'm at the door.
Well, then, you know what? To be inclusive, I'll say this last thing, is that using the God medium to achieve what you achieve is perfectly acceptable, and it fits all parameters of psychology, which is that we are, because we're free will creatures, we need a system of belief. And if your belief systems are compassionate, then they are empowering. If they are not compassionate, then they are energy drains, not just for you, but for the rest of the world. So dive into the good book, lady.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Well, we are over time. I kind of felt it was going to go this way because I knew this conversation would be stimulating. I want to thank you, Marcus, for being here with us. I would like to talk about good sugar and juices and stuff the next time, but because we're on a time constraint, we'll have to wrap it up right now. I definitely appreciate everything that you said. I wrote down so much stuff. It's great. I really love it. As we always do on the huddle, we end with our tenets, our daily huddle tenets. So I'm going to run through those right now. The first is live out loud, my good people, right? Make a difference around you where you go. Love stronger than you have before. Test it out, see where it takes you, right? Move the body daily in an intentional way to promote fluidity and openness and better respiratory health. Also, eat mostly plant-based. Give it a shot, Make sure that your body is not only getting the nutrients that it deserves, but also just stays fluid and can break down things easier so that we can be a little bit more easy in the world. We can flow a little bit better, right? Also, give of yourself. Give of yourself more than you have before. There's some people who need what we have. And when we give, we also expand our energy in a way that you may not even know if you've never tried it, right? It's an excellent thing. And also, stress less, my good people, right? Stress less is two simple words, but as Marcus said, it may take 22,000 steps to get there, but it's possible, and it is in our best nature to do so. And that's the Daily Huddle, my good people. I appreciate you so much for being here. Please join us every day on the Daily Huddle. We have a different topic every day, and we have different hosts that are enlightening and so good, so powerful. Thank you, Marcus. Welcome. We'll speak with you.